Hey, Nick here with my first ever behind the scenes video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at anything and everything that went into making my latest Minecraft animation. So get excited, and let's get this party started. So welcome to the video, guys. I am currently here in Blender, and this is my first ever behind the scenes video, or anything like this, anything unscripted, me just talking about whatever I want to talk about. As I said before, the program I use is called Blender. For those of you who haven't seen Blender before, this is it. I know not everybody has seen Blender before, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick overview of like organization. What are all these like things on the screen? What is window render, UV editing, animation? What is this big list of things over here? What's all this? What's all this stuff at the bottom? What's in the middle? So I can talk about like a bit of terminology to get everybody started. And if you have seen Blender before and you're just looking to learn how to get better at animation, if you can learn that from me, then this will be quick and it will be painless. So I guess here we go. So up here, we have all these files, and not really anything important, but right here we have layout. This is where you're going to want to move all your objects around, and like I can go and like grab this part of the umbrella, or I can grab this bit of the island, or I can grab these lights, or I can grab the actual character and move them around. And you could actually animate here, but you don't want to, okay? So layout, we don't care about sculpting, you don't care about UV editing, don't care about texture paint, shading. Animation is where I do all my animating. Right over here is the outliner. This is where all my organization is. I can put all my objects here. I have each base that you can see in the actual video, that I have them all invisible right now so that they're not cluttering up the viewport, which is this big thing in the center. Down here is the timeline, which is where you can see all these little yellow things, or orange. They are all the keyframes for everything that is put on this character right here. So I can look at the head, those are all the keyframes. Look at like the right upper leg, there's all those keyframes. Right here's all the settings over here on the right. Again, that's not very important here, but yeah, that's a quick overview. This is Blender. Here we are, chilling in the camera of scene 2 at 1,251 frames out of 2,800, as you can see down here. I don't know why it's sitting right here, but it is, so let's get out of the camera and take a look at what we got. Now here is where I started to learn a few things. First off, in the gen scene, the character, the armature is this little highlighted thing that's inside his body right here. It sticks to him, which is how I control all the movements. In the gen scene, he just runs around. Like I could technically view from any angle and it wouldn't make any difference what goes on. Here, I started to learn that you only have to animate what is on the camera. So we're going to take a look at what goes on behind the scenes. So we have him running up here, and he does a jump. I was still fairly new at this point, and then run up here. This whole part actually got redone after I figured out the whole IK versus FK, again, inverse kinematics versus forward kinematics. I think that's what it's called. When I figure out how to switch that, actually, I'm going to show you guys how I do that. So right now, we have the inverse kinematics. See, I can move the feet around. I can move the arms around. This is around. Now, the issue with using inverse kinematics at all times is that you can only get very linear motion of the endpoint, like the hand. Like I can go from right here straight to right here. Now, this isn't always what you want. If you want to have a bit of a spin, that's not good. So if I switch to FK, come on, FK. Okay, now we're in FK. I can go here and I can rotate. And it gives me a linear rotation, which, as you can see, the end right here, the end of the hand, that is now moving in an arc as opposed to a line, which is why you do not want to use inverse kinematics all the times. In fact, inverse kinematics are should be used less frequently than forward kinematics. So anyway, we're up here. Where's the camera? The camera's right here. Now, you might think, oh, up to this point, we've had him running around. We have this. He's running. He's up here. And then what happens next? He walks. Oh, now there's another character on the screen. What happened? Like, this looks fine on screen. But what is going on behind the scenes? Let's take a look. So first off, this whole time that we are running and this is playing, this guy is just sitting here in a running pose, just randomly in this generator out of sight. You can't tell he's there. And then as soon as we walk forward, oh, he teleports out here and he's running. He does this little jump on the bed. And the first character just sits here and kind of shifts to the next position so that I don't have to worry about what he's doing at this time. All I care about is what's on camera, which is this guy. He pulls out his sword. And then as soon as we switch, he starts moving again. And this guy's, now they're both on camera, which is slightly more difficult. I have to animate them both. Now the whole slow motion sequence right here, which is not perfect, but I basically animated in real time. And then I put some keyframes right at the start, which is right about here. And I had the keyframes at the end, and I scaled them all so that this part would take longer. Which is, I don't know if it was the best way to do it, but that is how I am currently doing slow motion shots. Maybe that will change in the future, in which case I will be happy to tell you in my future videos. So he jumps down. Right here is where the fight starts. Now, I have never done a fight sequence before. I don't know how a fight sequence works. I was like, oh, this will be easy. I know what a fight looks like. Everybody thinks they know what a fight looks like. But do you really know what a good fight looks like? What is good choreography? Like, if you think about it, can you imagine a fight in your head? How would it go? How are you going to carry that out so it makes sense? Now, I didn't know. I got up to here, and I had the first hit, and he does a little spin and hits the thing. And I'm like, oh, no. What do I do now? So I was kind of stuck. And I was going very slow. So I like kind of, oh, yeah, there's another clip right here. Like let's take a look at what happens right here. We have this side, and the camera switches. So let's go this camera, now this camera. What's actually happening? You can't tell anything moved, but if we go outside the camera, this happens. So I just moved them around so that they would be in a better spot for the camera when we get a close-up of his face. So we just move him up a little bit more, which is a little awkward positioning, but again, you don't see this first character. You don't see him on the camera. It doesn't matter. All you see is the sword. But I was kind of stuck, and I ended up watching like a whole lot of like sword fighting videos on YouTube, which is very interesting. I encourage everybody to try it. But it didn't help a whole lot at first. Now I'm looking at this is a little iffy. But do this little spin. And again, this is some playing with the camera right here. We have only what's on camera. He's on the ground. He's on the ground. Oh, we're going. Let's go look out of the camera. He's doing the spin. On the camera, we see him go, oh. And then all of a sudden, what? Where'd he go? Where's the first character? He's there, and then he's not. And I just did that in between camera cuts, so I can get this close-up of him hitting the sword in the ground. And then I kind of just did like pretended that some time passed without actually animating him. And I start him out. Yeah, we don't look at what's going on right here. We start him out. Where is he? Right here. Mid-roll. And he does this little flip, this is a good example of the inverse kinematics versus forward kinematics thing. These legs are currently using forward kinematics, which is why that they go in such a nice arc, and the arms are going a nice arc. His arcs look nice. The only time that you want to use forward kinematics, the only time you want to use inverse kinematics is when something has to be attached to something else. If you don't want it to move, which is like the feet on the ground, right? Like if you look right now, these feet are in inverse kinematics, and so that they stick to the ground when I'm moving. So they fight. Now, these first two sword strokes, they don't make a whole lot of sense, I don't think. Especially this part right here. And then the kick. And then right here is basically where all the strangeness ends, and something kind of clicked. So we have this. And right about there is when I figured out the whole inverse kinematics versus forward kinematics thing. And I repeatedly, if you watch the feet, the squares mean that there's inverse kinematics, and no squares means it's forward kinematics. If we watch the feet, let me just slowly go through these. So inverse, and then as soon as they come off the ground, they're in forward kinematics, so they get some nice movement, some nice arcing movement, like a foot actually moves. And as soon as they hit the ground, like right here, we're back on the inverse kinematics. And for the steps, inverse kinematics. And then he gets shoved, feet come off the ground, and they're in forward kinematics again. They land. Also, this block, I'm gonna move this, hide the block. That doesn't show up. That was just so I remember what color the island is. But we hit this part, and we see the hand right here. Inverse kinematics. It's sticking to the stone. Even though it does move a little bit, but that's because I got too close. And then we push off the stone, have a little bit of this, and throw the sword. I was very proud of this whole bit right here. There's a lot of detail going on in the background with this character. He spins, and then he has this nice look up thing. I really liked that. But then we have this fall, and he kind of he falls and then he disappears. I'll go in rendered view, which is this little circle up here, which means that I am actively tracing the light rays to see what it should look like once I actually render out the animation. So here we have the lighting. This is what it looks like with the lighting. Now if I fly on over and I look at without the lighting, I lit this for the gen scene, and then I took it all and I just moved it right over here. Right over here. Because if I take it away, that's darker, this is darker. So I have like a light in each corner. That's gone. And then what really brought it together, because the issue is you want some sunlight, some overhead lighting, but then we have this roof here, so you're not going to get any overhead lighting. So what I did is, here it is. We have a lamp right up here that's shining light down as if it is the sun, which again does not make a whole lot of sense, but it looks good, which is why I did it. So if I go ahead and get rid of it, pitch black. Nobody wants to look at this. This is why we need some nice lighting. But yeah, that is that. That is this scene. All right, last but not least, the bed break scene. So how did I do it? How did I get him to hit it and break? How did I get the bed to break? I think this is the best way that I could have done this bed break. I thought about, oh, maybe he hits the bed and it pops into a little block and disappears, which would be a little boring. Maybe I have it actually just like, maybe I like try and cut it up. What if I go into edit mode right here and I take like the knife tool and I drag it across and I try and cut up the bed. That I thought that also probably wouldn't be the best way to do it. So what I did here is I used, if we go over here on the side with all the settings, this panel right here, these are modifiers. So there is actually such a thing as an explode modifier, which basically generates a particle system that as soon as that kind of it gets rid of the actual bed, and it goes and it generates all these particles that have the colors of the bed on there. So we have all these little pieces of the bed. So like if I hide I'm just gonna hide this. So originally it looks like this. We just take the bits and pieces of the bed here, and they break apart and they fall on the ground and they slowly disappear, and then they actually just entirely they just all go away, and that's that. That was pretty solid, but it generates like a particle system. So it emits all these little bits and pieces that are in the shape of the bed and have the colors of the bed on them. And it's called Quick Explode, which was I was very lucky to find. Blender has all these weird little things like that. But I have this doesn't look very good. So what I did is I took a solidify modifier, which adds in thickness, and it makes these look like blocks. I can actually go in here and I can change the thickness, so it makes them look like this, which I don't think is what we're going for, but you can change it so it's just the right number. And I can make it a little thinner, I can make it a little thicker until I look like they're just cubes, so I can see the individual voxels. A voxel is a 3D pixel, which I can call those voxels. The bed looks like it's made of voxels. Actually, one of the other things that I originally was going to do was I was going to take the bed. Let me just duplicate this and take it, and I will. Can I delete these? And I'm going to delete these. So originally, we have the bed, and I was going to go and I was going to cell fracture the bed and do a physics simulation. So I was going to do cell fracture, which is this thing right here. And I have all these settings. I don't know what any of these settings are doing. So maybe these are the settings I use, but basically I click OK, and it kind of tries to break up the bed into these pieces. Right here it's generating the pieces. And it kind of tries to map the colors properly, but as you can see, it's getting a little messed up. So now we have all these pieces, so I can just take pieces of the bed. Now, if we look at this, it looks kind of transparent because it's trying to mix a blank. It's trying to mix an invisible texture with the wood texture. And the first issue with this is not only does it look like this with all the nice straight lines are gone on just this side really, and I guess I didn't even look at the bottom. The bottom's even worse. We don't look at that. And I guess this side, but the end is okay. But anyway, the textures are messed up, so that would look awful. I don't want it to look like that. I don't know why the pillow is like showing up in the middle here, but it is. And I was gonna have this, and I was gonna do a physics simulation by putting like a ball on his hand, and then I was gonna turn all these little pieces into the original bed was in there. I was gonna turn all these little pieces. Look at this. I was going to turn all these little pieces into actual objects, and it was going to calculate where they would go based on the amount of force that they get hit with. Which did not go very well, which is why I didn't do that. So instead, we just have this. One final thing that I want to look at before ending the recording is how I did the camera work. So normally you would take the camera. Let me like add in a camera so I can show you. So I would take the camera, and it's pointing a direction, and I would keyframe it. I'd keyframe it right here. So I would go keyframe the rotation, and then I'd jump forward a little bit, and then I'd rotate it, and maybe I'll like move it, and I'll keyframe the rotation again, keyframe that, and then it'll go between there. Now, this is another similar issue to the inverse kinematics all the time, is that you get a very linear rotation, which is not something you want for the camera. The camera does not look good with a linear rotation, or even sometimes linear movement, but we take that anyway. So what I'll do is I have the camera, and I have it so that I tell it, okay, now point to this little object, this empty. This is what this is called. This is called an empty, this little set of axes. I say that always point towards this empty, and then when the empty moves, the camera will move. So instead of the camera's rotation being linear, we get whatever the camera is looking at being linear, which is something like if you look at the way the camera moves, the farther away we get, the rotation of the camera would slow down, which is just something you cannot do by manually rotating it. Like it just would not look smooth. This is how you get some nice smooth natural movement with the camera. Like if we play the animation, it's always pointing at this set of axes. So I just have the axes follow the character around wherever I want the camera to be looking. I have it following that around, and the camera always looks at that, which gets you some really, really nice movement. All right, so here we are in the thumbnail blend file. This was the behind the scenes for the animation of my Bedwars animation. I hope you all enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe for when I post my behind the scenes content for doing all the sound effects and how I actually wrote my own music and made that for this animation. That was not just some random song. I put that together myself. Whether or not it was good or bad, I don't know. It's probably bad, but we're going to talk about that and all the weird things that I ran into as I made that. And I will see you next time.